G'day and welcome to episode 9 of the Puck Bunker. I am Rocco Zappia, joined as always by my co-host Darren Boyce. Boyce, how's it going today?
Doing all right, Rocco. How you doing?
My nerves have settled a little bit from the Team Canada decision that had. I think
Have you calmed down at all?
I calmed down a little bit. But then I see this morning Steos and Travis Green's comments about Yakimchuk, and they're just as baffled as we are. So I got all riled up again this morning.
It makes a good point. If they had just kept him on the team for 9 games, he probably gets invited to camp. That's simple as that.
Well, I think Travis Green's comment was good. He said, and I don't want to quote him, but paraphrasing, but something along the lines of, if there's 10 better defensemen here in the CHL, I'd like to see them.
I mean, I don't disagree with them.
No,
I might have a bias on that because I do like the Sens, but still, I don't disagree with that comment.
Well, look, I think it baffled. I think it baffled a lot of people that like, what's the rule? If you're a top 10 pick, you can't make the selection camp unless you're under 6 foot.
Well, listen, we already went through this on our previous episode. If anyone wants to listen to that,
yeah.
But yes, I'm again considering there was only one right-hand defenseman I think is actually guaranteed to be on that roster. It is a little confusing.
I don't know. Anyways, that's fine if they win the gold medal like we all hope they do, then they'll be able to give us a nice dose of shut the hell up, and if they don't, then
we'll start the Free Misa hashtag. That's what we'll do.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Yakimchuk might be the biggest omission by a lot.
I don't know if he's the biggest one. I mean, I don't think he would be their number one defenseman, whereas I feel there's 2 forwards that would be in their top 6. So
maybe. I don't know if there's a defenseman on that team that has Yakimchuk's offensive ability, though, honestly, as well as Dickinson's playing.
Well, Schaefer would, but again, I'm worried. I'm worried if he even makes the team at this point. So,
God, oh geez, he has to.
Actually, before we start, you know what he'll end up being? He'll end up being the 7th defenseman to start, and then he'll have a good game against Germany or something, and then they'll end up having to play him. That's what'll end up happening. I'm predicting that now.
Yeah, maybe. Well, either way, we've got. We're going to get back to some player profiles here, and they're the final 4 guys from the initial Central Scouting A ranked list. So these are projected first rounders. So we've covered them all except for these 4. So we've got Bear out in Everett, Ryabkin from Russia, Cole Reschny, and Charlie Trethewey as well. So those will be the last 4, and once we're done those, our next episode is probably going to be our first ranking, right?
Yeah. So I will just start off by saying Joshua Ravensbergen's an A as well, but we're just going to save the goalies here for a later date and try and do them all together. But yeah, Carter Bear started as a B, but apparently I think he's moved up to an A. So that's
I mean, he's got 45 points. So
very valid. He's in the right spot now.
Let's kick off with a guy who scored the last goal at the CHL USA Prospect Challenge, and Boyce, I'll throw this video up and throw it over to you here.
All right, so we're gonna look at Cole Reschny here right now. So he's 5'10", 187 pounds. Born April 2007. He plays for the Victoria Royals in the WHL. And as he said, he just recently played in the CHL US Challenge for the CHL team. So far, he's played 24 games. He's got 10 goals and 22 assists for 32 points, and he's a +5. So, I mean, he is, definitely producing, for his team. The strong assets I see with this player particularly are his passing and playmaking and his offensive hockey sense. Those are very high. He has the ability to pass on rushes in tight spots. He's very good in the neutral zone that way. He's pretty good there. But what you notice pretty quickly with him is when he's in the offensive zone, he has the ability to hold on to the puck until the right moment to find a teammate. He's very good at finding guys when he's slowed down in the offensive zone. He's very good at that. He hits teammates at right spots too when they're, they can create advantages when they get the puck. Uh, I mean, he's really, really good at that. The other thing I noticed too is he's actually a very confident playmaker behind the net, which was something you don't see very often anymore. Kind of again, not comparing him to Wayne Gretzky. I don't think you compare anyone to that, but it is unique to kind of see that skill set, especially in 2024. I haven't really seen that from a lot of guys. So that's what I like to see, and you can generally see he's a threat in the offensive zone, whether it's on the power play or even 5-on-5. Defensemen are, kind of worried about where he is, and he can kind of make a very very high end offensive pass at any time. So they're always looking at that. In terms of his hockey sense too, again, he can play on the half boards, on their power play. I think he was playing kind of in the bumper spot sometimes too. Um, so I mean, they want to kind of use him as a decision maker there, which kind of reflects, he's got good vision, good computing of the game in that zone. He's a good processor. And he doesn't really have that, he doesn't, there's not a lot of turnovers really created from his offense. That's the other thing I noticed. I mean, obviously, if you're going to have the puck a lot, you might make some, but he was pretty consistent. He was, I thought he was very high end in that regard. We had talked about maybe Jake O'Brien again. He was another kind of high level passer, and I thought Reschny actually was a better, offensive zone playmaker than he was. So that's, kind of the level we're talking about here. Puck skills pretty good too. He had some ability to make guys miss on the rush. I mean, he was pretty good at showing the puck. He is kind of small, but I mean, that's, um, there was still some strength there. I mean, he's almost 190 pounds, so he's not, I wouldn't say he's frail or anything like that. Again, just kind of, a bit smaller. And he had really good hand-eye, and, but he's really good at kind of manipulating space, but he does it more with his passing than, say, dangling or, individual efforts that way. In terms of kind of the downside or maybe something, that might, concern some scouts, I wouldn't even call them down. I'd say his skating is kind of average. It's not, elite, but I mean, his general speed's fine. I don't think it's, I don't think he's really going to burn guys. I mean, I think his agility is pretty good. I mean, he has, good abilities to stops and starts and pivots in that. Again, it's not the highest of high end, but it's really good when you combine it with his hands. I think that's, um, it's definitely a skill set. I think it could translate. I mean, if he's in the NHL, I feel like he would be very good on, be very good on a power play. I don't think there's really any question about that. And he would definitely, even with high level D, I think he would have the ability to kind of manipulate space that way. It looks like he's pretty good with doing that. You know, as games speed up and he plays at higher levels. Even the CHL US game, he was still creating, so that was good to see. Defensively, I thought he was pretty good. I mean, I thought he was fairly responsible, as responsible as he could be. Sometimes he's a little late getting back to, on assignments, but overall, I mean, he was a neutral zone presence. He got into positions where he could get the puck. He created opportunities. He does have an active stick. He's just small, so it's not really a weapon for him. But he was a willing defender, and he created a decent amount of turnovers just generally himself. Specifically, again, talking about his hand-eye, that was pretty good. I thought his effort was pretty good too. Engaged in battles. The only thing is, again, I don't think he's really going full speed always. I think he's more using his brain to kind of figure out what's going on than going a mile a minute. But overall, I mean, he was willing to take some hits to make plays. He wasn't shying away. But in terms of physicality, I mean, I don't think you're ever going to get a guy who's, going to hammer guys or completely out muscle guys. But I mean, he would engage in battles. I mean, he tries. He's just, again, just a little bit of a smaller body. So, I mean, I wasn't really something I hated out of him. It's more, I'm just a little worried maybe about his size. But again, he was, still productive in these situations. I mean, so again, I would say there's a lot of offensive upside here with this player. And it'll be interesting to kind of see where, scouts rank him, because I do think just with not having the elite skating and maybe some of the guys above him and being a smaller body, it might be a little bit some discrepancy where he goes. He's definitely my first round. I would have a lot of interest in him as, if he can fit in on a top six and, he can really, even right now at the CHL level, like he really drives play just, because he's making a lot of decisions that's going on the ice. I would almost say he's controlling the game at certain points, which is, again, not a lot of, I don't think there's a lot of guys in that draft that or in this draft that really have that ability, especially in the offensive end. And even amongst his peers at the Holinka, there's in one of the clips there. I mean, there's a highlight reel goal where again, he's just kind of manipulating everyone on the ice and, he finds open space and he scores. And that was, even more reflective that he wasn't even passing in that situation. He still has that ability, on an individual basis to create offense too. So I like this player. But again, it's, I think you could see some guys maybe have him in the top, definitely maybe some guys have him in the top 20, but then other guys might be, around 25 just because they have some hesitations on him. But yeah, so that's Cole Reschny, and I like the player, and yeah, over to you, Rocco.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much to disagree with there with you. Ideally, you'd like to see a guy 5'10" be a little bit more dynamic than that.
Mhm.
But that said, I think he is a shifty player, and I just don't think that his top speed is necessarily elite. But I think his brain speed might be pretty elite. He looks
I
like
think
he
his
can.
yeah, I
He
think
looks
his
like he can
IQ is
outthink guys.
dynamic. Yeah.
So he looks like he can outthink guys there, and as you see with so many players who aren't the fleetest of foot. Now, this guy's not slow. Like let's not get it twisted. He's going to be at worst an average speed guy at the NHL, but you just want a little more from that typically if you're smaller. But a lot of guys that are a lot slower than him make it because they can think the game so well. And I think this is a player, at least he appears to be able to think the game very well, and he looks like he can manipulate defenses with looking them off and that sort of thing, and he can use some deception with his hands and the blade of his stick to open lanes for guys, and that's a sign of a very good playmaker. And you put a very good playmaker like that alongside, I mean, you need someone, maybe ideally someone who has a hell of a shot, and maybe someone who's a bigger body. That might be a pretty fun line to watch. Because if he can play with guys that can keep the ice open a little bit for him, where he's not getting clogged down due to his size, and he has a little room to move around and manipulate the puck. I mean, he's a really, really good playmaker, and he's just not just a passer. We saw in that CHL USA game, he can shoot the puck too.
Yeah. So so we talked about O'Brien earlier. We're a little worried that he doesn't shoot the puck enough, that it's not, goalies can kind of overcompensate. I don't think that's the case with Rushny. I think, you have to defend his shot, and he has the ability to shoot the puck, more than capable, of scoring in those situations. Um, I mean, there's evidence of guys that aren't the fastest skaters, but high, again, not big bodies, but they're, they have high IQ, high offensive zone, computing. And again, not comparing the player, but like a guy like Patrick Kane was kind of like that, right? Like it's not the greatest skater, but
Well,
but he never got hit. He never got hit, Rocco, and
no,
that's
but
what I'm
he's okay.
saying.
But I disagree on Pat. People say Patrick Kane's not the greatest skater. Why did he never get hit? He wasn't the fastest skater. He was a phenomenal. He has some of the best edges you've
He's
ever
better on
seen.
his edges, but also to the pucks leaving before he's even in a position to get hit. And I think that's more what I'm pointing to there,
Yeah,
is
fair.
that he kind of utilized when guys do try to go hit him, he can utilize that to create advantages elsewhere. He's not just going to hold the puck and get hammered. And that's, again, there's some instances of that in some of the games I watched where even if the guys are, that he is in that position, he can create kind of an offensive, situation for someone else. So, I mean, again, that'll have to translate at a higher level, and obviously, especially teams are going to key in on him. But again, as I said, when guys pressure him, he can make plays. When guys don't pressure him, he can still make plays, and he can do it on the rush, and he can do it when the game slows down. So that's
Well, I
when
think
you
you
have.
hit
Oh, sorry,
I
go
think
ahead.
I think you hit a key point there, saying that he can make plays under pressure, and that's a big difference. You see all the time, people are like, "Oh, like this guy put up 2 million points in junior. Why did he never do anything in the league?" It's well, a lot of guys in junior are better than 80% of junior players, but 80% of junior players don't make the NHL, so they feast on a little bit lower competition. But
Yeah.
when they're playing against better players, and that's one of the biggest things when you're playing against better players is you're under a lot more pressure and you have a lot less time. Their ability to produce disappears, and if and I haven't seen anything in the games I've watched to contradict this, but if you feel like he's a guy that can really make plays under pressure, that's something that might move him up your list or anyone's list for that matter, despite the fact that he's a little smaller than you'd like.
Yeah. And I mean, he's a willing defender. I don't know if he's, a star in that end, but he's not bad.
He's fine.
Um, yeah, he's fine. I mean, it's just, again, you kind of worried if the worry again, it's just, again, it's the body type. We talked about Schmidt in an earlier episode. Like, it's just teams, might have their own ideas on those type of players and just don't look at them as highly, and whereas other teams will. So, I mean, there could be some, it could be an advantageous spot to take him for some teams in the 20s.
Yeah.
How we were speaking, the Dallas Stars last time. Like, again, it's just there's a high upside offensive guy you can get later in the first round that has a lot of traits that could maybe translate at that level. I mean, there's evidence that those traits could translate in other players, so it's not out of the
Now,
realm of him, being an effective player from that spot.
now you put that out there, so I got a counterpoint just to play devil's advocate. But last year there was a guy who was not the biggest guy, but was known to be really, really smart player and really, really good playmaker and put up a ton of points and had a good nose for the net and did a lot of things you like, but wasn't the biggest and wasn't the fastest, but he was smart. And his name is Tarek Parasak, and he ended up going in the top 20, right? Because someone sees, I think most teams believe, that the brain is the big equalizer for the best players are always smart, unless they're complete freak athletes. The truly best players are always really smart, and being smart can make up for so many things. So if a guy does have good hockey sense, and that's pretty well known, like it could go the other way where a team likes him. Maybe they say, you know what, screw it, I don't care if he's 5'10", we're taking him in the top 20 because we were convinced of that his brain will translate.
Well, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility he goes top 20. I mean,
Me
he's
neither.
in terms of skill level, and again, we've talked about there's not a lot huge offensive upside in this draft. I mean, this is a guy that, again, can potentially control play on the ice. I mean, again, even some of the offensive guys we talk about, we don't really talk about some of them as line drivers, right? Like, this guy
No,
could be a potential line driver. So that is definitely appealing. Now, I'm just looking at where he's been ranked by people. It's anywhere from 13 to 27. So I think that's probably the realistic range. 13 might be, yeah, maybe. I mean,
dude, I think it's
once you get to
pretty,
that spot, it's probably just
pretty wide open, man.
it's just kind of what a team preference is. So, I mean,
There's not. I think people really underestimate, or maybe they overestimate. They overestimate the difference between a guy picked at 11 and 26.
Yeah,
There,
like
there's
I
not
think,
there's not always a huge. Now, some years depends where the drop off is, but at a certain point, like you have your top group of guys, it's usually your top 8 to 12 guys that separate themselves. And after that, man, like until you get to the mid-second round, there's these guys, they're all really talented players, all of them.
oh yeah, it's just, yeah, again, it's going to be kind of what the organizational want is at this point, and I can definitely see the upside in this player that an
Sure.
organization would like.
Oh, sure.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Just a couple things to go over. I mean, his Corsi numbers are quite good, and again, he is a 2007 birthday, so again, he's a younger player for this draft. again, his underlying numbers, kind of check out with the eye test that he is, his team is doing better with him on the ice. The numbers back that up as well, even though the eyes would also say that. And his goals for, the expected goals for and goals against, I think they could be a little higher. Just some of the, the other guys in the draft might be a little bit higher for expected goals for. But again, that might be kind of reflective of the team maybe he's on. But again, he's, I like the player. I think the Corsi numbers kind of reflect what type of player he is. And I think maybe a bit of a concern might be whether he's, I don't know if he can be, I don't know if he could play center. Like, I just don't know if that would be.
Yeah,
that might be kind of again maybe something that might
it
not have to go as high. But
yeah, I know I like him as well. I think we've run this conversation. We've talked about really, and I think we're on the same page for the most part. And I'm debating. We're going to come out with. We're still discussing how much, but probably our top 20. And for me right now, he's on the bubble of that. I like him as a first rounder, I think, based on what else I've seen this year. But you are what you draft, and he is a little bit smaller. So does a team want to, how high of a pick does a team want to put into that is the thing with him. But there's not much to dislike about his game. I don't see any red flags aside from the size really that would prevent him from becoming a player. It's just where does a smaller playmaker kind of fit in as much as you like the guy.
Yeah. And I think he was pretty good in the Holinka. Like when we watched, I think he was pretty noticeable. He'll play in the under 18s this year. That would be a pretty big tournament for him too.
Yeah.
I would assume he would play kind of a leading offensive role in that too.
Well, that team depends, right? Because they're not taking guys out of the CHL playoffs for that tournament. So it's the teams that lose in the first round will send guys.
I'm just going to look at the standings here. They're in second place in the West, but they have a negative goal differential. So,
we'll see. Long
see
way
where they are.
Long way between now and April.
Yeah, but we'll see where they are. But they aren't. I think there's some teams better than them in the dub. So it's possible he could be able to play in that tournament. If he's not, his team's playing late in the playoffs, and that means he's played well. So
exactly. So that's Cole Reschny, our first feature of the day, and now we're going to take it far, far, far east over to the evil empire in Russia and feature their probably top prospect this year, Ivan Ryabkin. So this is a 5'11", 180-pound center for the Dynamo franchise across various leagues this year. He's played in 3 different leagues already. He has so far no points in 2 games played in the KHL, the top Russian league. He has 2 points across 8 games in the VHL, which is their second men's division equivalent of the American League, and 9 points in 12 games in the MHL, which is their under 20, their top junior league. Now, those numbers are not impressive, but let's take it back 1 year, where last season as a 16-year-old, he played 58 games in the MHL, and he actually set a points record for a 16-year-old season in the MHL in terms of both total points as well as points per game. And this puts him ahead of current stars or recent high picks like Michkov, Demidov, Kucherov, Buchnevich, and Kaprizov. So it really has been a tale of 2 seasons for this guy. He came into the year as a consensus 5, top 10 at worst, but most people had him in their top 5 coming into the year as a very, the next guy in line of in terms of high skilled Russian forwards. But he's really struggled to get going at any level of play this year. And I think a lot of people are trying to figure out why. And now it looks like he's actually going to try and come over and play the second half of the year in the USHL. So that'll be a 4th league for him this year. And if you count some international games that he's going to end up playing with the Russian team against some other banished countries, that'll be 5 different teams and leagues that he'll play on this season. So I wonder personally, if that in itself, the constant bouncing around is having a lot to do with why he's struggling, or whether it has more to do with how he's played. Now, to go through his skills, his skating's a plus. It's not elite though. I don't think he's ever going to be a burner, but he can get up and down the ice. He's not slow by any means. Edges are very good. His quickness is pretty high end, I think. And he's very good at stops and starts in tight spaces, and he's especially good at doing it with the puck. So that is part of skating. It's not all about straight line speed. There's not a lot of times you're going to get up to full speed actually in the run of a game. So the quickness is there, and the edge work is there, and that's something that gives him a leg up, I think. Puck skills are quite good, but he can actually be a little bit overconfident with it and a little bit lackadaisical at times, and he can overhandle the puck and skate himself into trouble trying to make one too many moves, which I don't love to see. But when he's playing well, he can slow the play down. He can beat guys one-on-one. He can open up lanes by changing pace, which is pretty impressive. And he's very, very, very patient as a distributor. That's one thing that I've noticed. He doesn't. You're not going to see him rush a play too often. He's actually more likely to overweight on a play, trying to open up something perfect, than he is to rush something. But he's poised and he's patient and he's confident with the puck. So yeah, that's something at least. Playmaking wise, I think he's excellent when he's on his game, and he's quite creative when he's on his game. Again, does a great job at opening up lanes and delaying to do so. But when he's off his game, he can force plays and he can telegraph plays and he can get one track minded with them. So there's a little bit of a two-sided coin there for sure. Shooting wise, his shot can be quick, and he gets decent wood on his one timer. But at the end of the day, he's only scored one goal across 22 games this season. So something there is obviously not working, and I'm not entirely sure what that is. I think he's gotten to a point where I've seen him defer sometimes to just go into pure playmaker mode when maybe he could shoot, or he's lost that confidence and he's hesitating a half second on pulling the trigger, where last year he wouldn't have done so. So I think a lot of it is becoming a little bit mental with him when it comes to his shooting and his goal scoring. But that said, I don't think he's going to be a guy that's going to beat goalies at distance at the NHL level. But he showed last year that he can be a pretty good goal scorer. 24 goals last year, so something's gonna click for him sooner or later. Hockey sense wise, he was naturally a little bit better offensively than defensively. I do feel like at the junior level, he thinks the game a lot better than most. But at the pro level, he hasn't really been getting the looks to show it off properly in the offensive zone, because you're not playing top offensive minutes when you're playing pro as a 17-year-old. So it's been a little bit harder to judge in that sense, because he's also he's been able to work himself into pockets where guys won't find him at the junior level, or he'll delay a play to give a guy a lane, and the guy won't know to hit the lane. So now it looks like he's just holding the puck for no reason. So there's a lot of things that go into it, which made it a little bit more challenging to judge. And especially when he's bouncing around, he's not getting consistency in his line mates, which doesn't probably help. Defensively, I found his hockey sense to be better than the typical offensively minded teenage Russian player. But I mean, it's not elite. He's looking to produce offense mostly, but he did know how to at least play in his own end when he needed to. When the time came to cover for a man, he could get back, and he didn't lose his man puck watching too often. It's just a matter if he thought he'd get an offensive chance or not, how interested he was. I found his effort level to be fairly inconsistent, which didn't really surprise me. He could battle and be strong and win pucks, and then the next shift he was given some lazy forechecks and 2-3 strides up the ice, and that's it, sort of thing. And so I'd like to see some more consistency there, because he is strong physically, at least at this level. Now I wonder how that works at the pro level, because he's not big. He's 5'11". He's not small, but he's not big. He's already 180 pounds, so he is stronger than most of the junior level. But against pros, he's average. but he is solid, and I think he's got a pretty strong lower body, so I'm not really worried about it per se. He is willing to play physically, which you do like to see, but again, it's a consistency thing. I like to see that more on a shift-to-shift basis, because on any given shift, he could finish a check really hard on a guy, and the next it's a one-handed stick check in the corner. So I personally see a little more second line upside than first. So I don't know. If I'm looking at a top 10 pick, and I certainly, based on the games that I saw from this season, certainly wouldn't be a top 10 pick. And I don't know how much further down, but it wouldn't be great. He's getting a lot of credit because I got to see him last year and saw him be highly effective against his peers. So, that's not for nothing, but he's not a guy that's necessarily progressed super well from year to year, which is concerning. Now we'll see how he does when he gets to North America and he can finally develop a little consistency in where he's playing and who he's playing with. But he's going to need to have a big second half to regain some of this talk as a top 10 potential player, I think.
I don't think that's wrong. I mean, I agree with you on most of the points you're making there. Now, I will say this. He's probably, when he has been playing pro, I think in my mind, in the games I saw him playing pro, it's kind of an example of a young guy playing pro. He's not failing. I don't think he's, but he's not thriving, right? So it's,
well, that's what I said. He's not being given the looks that he was.
No, but he's, you know what? He's playing pro and he doesn't look out of place. I think in itself is, that's in itself is a good thing to see. I mean, you're not seeing much offensive upside in the situation. He's not playing very much. He's not going to play in those situations.
Yeah.
But I mean, even talking about his D zone, I mean, at the junior level, you talk about his inconsistency, kind of, an effort in that. When he was playing pro, that didn't exist. So, I mean, I definitely saw more, much more of that consistency when he was playing pro. That could also be the sign of a player that maybe, maybe he is a little bit kind of bored at that level. I mean, it's very possible, which again, maybe influences where we should pick him to that, there's a tendency there to maybe get a little bored. But when I saw his junior game, I mean, I saw what I wanted to see after watching the pro game. I mean, he looked faster. His passing and playmaking looked really good. I mean,
for sure.
I mean, he set up a lot of plays. And one skill I really liked is a lot of one-touch passing with him. It's not, he doesn't hold on to the puck very long. And when he tried that at the pros, I mean, he just wasn't really executing. I think he had good ideas. He just wasn't really, it wasn't that the D were really picking him off. It was just the pass was kind of in the wrong spot for the guy. It wasn't that he was firing it into a crowd and getting picked off for a breakaway or something, right? Like the idea was good. So I mean, that skill's really hard at that level, but I mean, if that translates at that level, that is a very high-end skill. Especially for a power play guy, that if you have a guy who doesn't need the puck on a stick at all and he can make good passes that way, that puck's gonna get firing around. And
he flashed some very high-end skill a couple times.
Yeah,
there was just zero consistency to it, and there was I mean, we both just mentioned this point in different wording, but he wasn't getting much help from his teammates in terms of finishing plays or being in the right spots to make him look good as a playmaker.
Yeah, but I mean, what I liked at the junior level is he was consistently at least making good decisions, like whether the guys around him weren't executing on that. I think there was kind of some evidence where he'd make a good play and just the other guy would screw it up, or he wasn't where he was supposed to be. Like, it's kind of that. I mean, I liked, again, I didn't think he failed at the pro level. I mean, my expectation of guys at the pro level is usually quite, especially when they're not getting a lot of ice time, is, not that high. You just want to look and see, again, are they failing out there? Like, do some of these skills they have, are they actually dangerous? I mean, you could see, what might work for him, but you want to see them when they go back to the lower level, be the better player. And maybe the numbers aren't translating, but I mean, at least on the video, you can see that he is the best player on the ice. Like, you can see that. So, I mean, I'm not sure. Again, I would have him in the top 10. I don't think I would, but I think a team will definitely. I mean, you'd like to see him have a better second half, put up some numbers wherever he's going to play. I think that'll be pretty big for him. But I mean, some team's going to take a shot on him. I mean, his numbers from last year are better than guys like Kucherov, right? Like at that level, like that's like again, and this is, you get him. Maybe you can get him out of Russia. You can get him on your development program. He gets into better situations where he's not jumping around all these different teams. Um, that's maybe there's some upside there because I do think we looked at Frondell, who has been kind of jumping back and forth in the Swedish leagues that way too, right? And my concern a little bit more with him was that when he went back to the junior level, he wasn't as dominant as I think he should be, but he's put up better numbers than Ryabkin has, kind of the same thing. But when I watch the game, I think Ryabkin kind of controls the game better, and there's kind of more offensive ability there than maybe Frondell. Now, again, different types of players, but that's, again, they're both of them are not like struggling at pro when they do play pro, which a lot of these other guys can't say they've done yet. So I mean, I think I would keep him inside the top 20 right now. Just because, again, I also have the belief that someone will just take a shot on that, that skill of like, what if a team like, even like Washington, again, they have pretty good success with Russian players.
Yeah, they've done okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, like some teams, it might be, again, there might be some red flags where they just say, I'm not drafting him. I can't really get a grasp on him. I can't look at him enough. It's, it's hard to scout over there. But there's some other teams that might, have an inside on him that they, maybe there's something else going on.
You'd have to be confident, though. You'd have to be confident in your Russian scouts. You have to be really confident. But I like him. I'm not trying to sound like I don't like him. I just haven't seen that top 10, borderline top 5 ability that looked like it was there coming into the year. But there's a long way between now and June, and he has a whole second half of the season to, if he comes over to the USHL and he's going off at a 1.2 points per game for the second half after he gets adjusted, sort of thing, and looks great in their playoffs, like does he have the ability to be into the top 10? For sure, of course he does. Sure. Yes, but I don't know that he's top 10 for me now. I think I'm more.
Yeah, he's outside my top 10 too.
He's in that 11 to 20 range, I think, for me now somewhere.
I mean, the earlier rankings had him from anywhere from 4 to 12. I think that was too, considering what's happened here lately with him, that's too high. I think a lot of these, rankings, you'll see him move down a bit. Again, some of these concerns that we put forward, there's no reason he can't, if he gets comfortable in a situation, starts producing, that he can't move up. I mean, there is a good player here.
Certainly, yeah. He's got a lot of very projectable tools that aren't going anywhere.
No, and I'd actually almost expect him to have a pretty good second half from the games I kind of saw, at least at the junior level. I mean, he was creating so many chances. They have to start, things have to start going his way at some point here.
Well, it's like Hagen's, where he's just doing some good things and just not getting the success. But it'll come. He's too good of a player not to. That's Ivan Ryabkin over for Dynamo in Russia. So we are going to go south of the border, and a guy that we had a chance to look at a couple times last week, and Darren is going to present Charlie Trethewey.
All right. So Trethewey is a 6'1", 190-pound right shot defenseman. So again, the right shot, we again, they're hard to come by. So right there, people are going to be pretty excited about that. He's an August 2007 birthday, so he's going to be one of the younger players in this draft class, which might influence maybe where he does end up in the rankings a little bit. Now, he was ranked an A-level prospect. He has struggled a bit this year, just maybe per what people were projecting him to be. So he's played, so he's played for the national team, the national development team, 24 games. 4 goals, 4 assists, 8 points, minus 20. And in their USHL schedule, he's played 5 games, got 1 assist. So, I mean, again, I think they maybe expected a little bit more out of him. In terms of the player, I mean, he's a decent sized body. The skill I think that played best with him, I think he had some decent short passing skills in the D zone. Wasn't a bad breakout passer. I thought he was pretty smart and didn't panic in that way when he was, had some pressure, could use his partner well. And again, as I said, his breakout passes weren't bad. It's just, again, once the first option was gone, that's when he kind of struggled a little bit. I mean, I think that's kind of a pattern with a lot of young defensemen. But again, I felt that more when he does screw up, there's, he did have some execution errors. Like he had good ideas. It just, the execution just didn't really go there. I didn't mind him in terms of his offense. I didn't think it was excellent, but it wasn't bad. I think it was a little, it was maybe average. I don't think he's going to create a lot on that end. But he held the blue line well. He's he was conservative, but he can make a simple pass there. Didn't mind him, but on the power play, I mean, I feel he overheld the puck and just fired it into shin pads too much. So I mean, I don't think there's a power play guy here, but I don't think there's maybe an offensive player that would hurt you per se. Could supply a little bit of offense, especially if the puck moving gets a little bit better. But what I was concerned about is I wasn't a huge fan of his skating. I thought it was really average. I mean, once he gets moving, he shows there's some speed, but I don't know. It doesn't look fast, and he gets, he can get beat at times, and his, agility and kind of pivots weren't great. He actually seemed more confident defending going forwards than backwards. There were situations where, he probably should pivot to backwards, and he kind of didn't. He didn't look that comfortable going backwards, which was, kind of a concern for me. I think that's a concern for a lot of people. Again, I mentioned his shot wasn't entirely accurate. I mean, I don't think he shoots from great spots. And I think he kind of lingers in poor shooting areas. He doesn't kind of keep moving with the play. Kind of, he's in a spot that's not really a threat. Wasn't a huge fan of that. Now, I mean, puck skills, I do think his hand-eye was okay, but I mean, I didn't, for a 6'1" defenseman, I would like his stick to be stronger. Doesn't knock down pucks kind of like the comparative prospects, especially the A-level guys. I mean, that skill doesn't exist like a Fiddler, for instance, who, is really elite at that. There is some good use of using his body, to shield a puck. He does have that ability and kind of make a play with that when he's, being pressured or along the boards. But again, I felt he kind of bobbles the puck a little bit too much, before he makes a play. So I'm a little bit worried about that as well. Defensively, I mean, again, talking about the stick, it's not totally there. I mean, he does get beat at times, on the rush. I don't think he's an elite rush defender. I think, that's, a bit of an issue. And even in the D zone, he did get caught at times. Just, he's just a little bit behind the play with his head sometimes. It's just, he has trouble finding a puck. The other guy finds it before him, stuff like that. In terms of his effort level, I mean, he battles, he works to defend. There's good efforts to get back. I mean, he'll, even if he gets knocked down, I mean, he'll try and get back, but it's like, it's fine. And physicality, again, I was a little bit worried he did get, again, he's willing to use his body, but his instances, he's kind of taking himself out of position to do that. And then in the game, and I don't think a lot of my concerns got alleviated watching the CHL US game. I think they actually kind of just compounded because he didn't look very good in that game. And I think, if I remember correctly, he even got benched at the end of the game that I was watching. And specifically when you look at it, like the minus 20 number is pretty glaring. And I know they're not a great team, but he's supposed to be the top ranked defenseman on that team, especially with, Carter Amico being hurt now. and he wasn't the best defenseman on that team. And so, I mean, I can see what a team, I don't agree with the A grade, first of all. I think he's definitely a B. And just, I mean, he's a right shot D. He's fairly big. He's at least an average skater. There might be a little bit of offensive upside here. I mean, a team will be interested at. He's not in my first round, though. I think this is, a second round type guy you're taking a shot on here that was supposed to have higher upside at the start of the year. Now, again, maybe he can turn it around here, but I definitely, he won't be on our top 20 list, though, here next week, unfortunately. So Rocco, I don't know what you saw, but yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to echo a good chunk of that. I think I agree with your assessment. My biggest thing for him is I don't know what's his elite asset. Like I don't know.
I didn't really have one. I mean, I think it was maybe shorter breakout passing might have been his elite asset, but I mean, it's not like a high level asset, at least from what I saw.
There's only so good you can be at making 5-foot passes, right?
Yeah.
So I just didn't know where he's elite. So he came into the year with a good amount of hype and clout because he's a fairly well-rounded defenseman in terms of his physical traits. Most of his physical tools are average or better. So that, especially at the beginning of the year when you don't know the draft class, that's going to put you on a lot of first-round lists. But I don't think that's always necessarily fair because I just don't know. I don't know how he turns the table for you, how he pushes the play for you. I don't know how he is a difference maker necessarily out there. And yeah, you can make a pretty decent breakout pass and you're a halfway decent skater and halfway decent size and all that stuff. And you're a right shot, which is helpful. But I don't know, like, are you elite shutdown defender? No, I don't think you are. Are you an elite puck mover? I don't think you're an elite puck mover either, right? So if you're not an elite defender and you're not an elite puck mover, that can oftentimes leave you in no man's land when it comes to projections as an NHL player, because every single, aside from the odd guy who's extremely well-rounded and can play on your middle pair or in your middle six up front, almost every player in the league has at least one tool that they are absolutely elite at. Even a fourth liner has a tool that they're elite at, that they are the 1% of the 1% in the NHL, right? Like you look at a guy like, pick a fourth liner like Nick Cousins, for example, right? So is he the most skilled? No. Is he, the biggest? No. But guess what? He's the hardest, and he tries, and he's dirty, and he's in your face, right? So he brings that elite element of competitiveness. So what is the elite element that Trethewey is bringing? And if he's not bringing one, are all his elements cumulatively good enough to be on a second pair? And I'm just not sure.
No, I'm not sure either. And again, we'll have to revisit him maybe later in the year, and hopefully, there's some signs of improvement. Maybe he can answer that question for us. But as of right now, I mean, I wouldn't really have him even, he's outside my first round. I don't think he would, I wouldn't have any, I wouldn't have any questions anyway about having to put him in.
I also don't want to worry about a guy's hockey sense. That scares me because that's how talented players don't make the league.
I don't want to worry about a defenseman's backwards skating. That's what I don't want to worry about. I'm kind of worried about it. So that's
and I didn't think he was great at the CHL game that I saw. I saw game 2 in Oshawa, and one thing that I'm looking for in those games where it is all the top players is who makes you notice them without having to look for them. And I didn't notice him unless I was looking for him.
So the game I was at,
sometimes as a defenseman, that's a good thing. You don't want to notice them, but when you're supposed to be the play driver, that's not a good thing.
No, and they kind of, I mean, I think that team was kind of expecting him to be a little more of an offensive guy for them.
Right.
I mean, they have some guys. I mean, Schock's
Yeah,
a
but
pretty good offensive guy for them.
the defenseman that I don't want to notice is the shutdown D. If I don't notice a
Yeah.
defensive defenseman, that guy had a great game probably. But if I don't notice a puck mover, that's probably not a great sign.
No. And again, as it just he's just a little bit, again, in some of the viewings I have, he's just a little bit behind the play. And again, again, a couple of viewings, like one of them, I was watching a college game. So again, maybe your expectations there a little bit, they're playing older guys. So, I mean, I can take that with a grain of salt, but then he's playing his peers kind of in that Five Nations tournament, and it didn't really look any better. So that's where you kind of get those concerns coming, right? Like that's where
a lot of times I watch him and I'm just like, okay. Yeah. Like I just don't see, I haven't seen something. I'm like, okay, this element of his game makes him a first rounder in my mind. And I'm not trying to sound like I'm shitting on the prospect, because we're still talking about a guy that's one of the top 60 prospects for his age in the whole wide world. So it's impressive in that sense, but I don't know that they got the grade right with an A rating. I don't know that I'd be comfortable taking him in the first round, even in the late first, unless I saw some pretty significant improvement.
I need to see more from him, because again, as you said, when doing my rankings, like some of the guys are putting, maybe a bit later, they have, again, maybe they have that size component, maybe they have that skating component. Like there's something there that you're like, okay, like that guy will play.
There's something
that
elite
component, right? Yeah.
There's something elite. Yeah. So I just haven't figured out what his elite tool is yet. And without an elite tool that can pretty regularly lose a guy in the shuffle, where it's like, and this has nothing to do with the player not being good. Like it's the NHL. Guys that don't make the NHL are incredible hockey players. Guys that make the American League are elite hockey players. But we're talking like you're looking for the best of the best and nothing less. So if you don't have something that can put you in that ranks, just being really good all around isn't usually good enough.
So we haven't reviewed him yet on here, but I mean, Carter Amico was also playing for them until he got hurt. And I like him a little bit better as a prospect, because I can see there is, he has that elite kind of size component to him, and he has this, massive long stick that he can just in it by itself can just end rushes that way. And so, I mean, I would have him, again, I know he's hurt the entire year, but I mean, that to me, just an example, I guess, two players kind of the same team, which one I would, my bias on, how I would like the player more. But again, he's out for the year. So yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I am a bit worried about what's the major translatable skill here.
Right. So here's a really good example of that was last year. Last year with the Oshawa Generals, right? They had two really, really good draft eligible defensemen. They had Luca Morelli and they had Ben Danford. Okay. So Danford was more of their defensive minded guy, very simple first pass, played physical, played the PK. Luca Morelli was more their puck mover, played power play, pushed the pace for them, really good puck mover. But you watch Morelli and it's like, frig, he's really good. He's really good at everything. Like and I was a fan of him. Okay. So I want to say that I am a fan of this player, and he was really good at everything, but he wasn't like, he was very good on the power play, but he wasn't like correct. You know what I mean? And he was good defensively, but he wasn't as good as Danford. And he did a lot of things well, but maybe not quite as well as another guy does a certain thing, even though he might do the rest of the things better than that guy. And the point I'm getting at, me and Grant debated, like we went back and forth. Every time we watched Oshawa, you'd come away with, okay, Danford was better, Morelli was better. At the end of the year, Morelli had a whole pile of points, but it ended up being Danford that went better. And one thing I kept coming back to is Morelli does all these things really, really well, but I can picture where I'm placing Danford in an NHL lineup because he knows what he is. Mm-hmm. And he ended up being a first round pick, which I personally thought that was a little bit early. I had them both ranked as seconds. Okay. I'll just say that I had them both ranked as seconds, and one was a late first, one was an early third. But that's kind of the debate that teams will have. It's like, okay, yeah, you might be a little bit better at everything than most guys, but there's at least a guy that's better than you at each individual thing. And sometimes that can make a difference because you're looking for a role. Where are you projecting them? Where are you placing them in your lineup? And you look at a guy like Danford, it's like, okay, very good defensively, physical, good penalty killer. We can project that. Whereas you look at his teammate Morelli, it's like, who's a better junior player, and it's like, but is he good enough to be the first power play? Is he good enough to be the first penalty kill? It's like, and if you're not sure, it's like, okay, well, that ended up probably getting him drafted a little bit later.
Well, it's the knowing your role thing, right? Like, there's lots of highly skilled guys that don't make the league just because they can't fit into a certain role. They're very pigeonholed in the certain role they can play.
Right, and they're not quite elite enough at it to make it, even though they're really good.
There's guys better than them at that role.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's my concern with a guy like Trethewey is you may end up you're maybe looking at a guy who's one of those jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah,
and that's actually my biggest concern with him, more than anything.
Well, I mean, if you're looking at the development, though, I mean, like again, like you're looking at these guys 4 or 5 years out, right? So, I mean, it's a decent sized body. He shoots right-handed. He shows some, there's a little bit of offense there that maybe you can develop. His skating gets a little bit better. I mean, I could see why a team would take him in the second round. I think there's,
yes, he's a legitimate
NHL player.
He's a legitimate prospect with a chance to play in the league. I just don't know if he's a first rounder or a second rounder.
I think he's a second rounder. I'll flat out say that.
Yeah, as of right now. But again, I've said it before, a long way between now and June.
Yep.
But that's Charlie Trethewey, someone that we think can has some room to move back up the ranks in the second half if he can show a little more promise like he did maybe last season or coming into the year. We've got one more guy to feature. As someone that I'm going to talk about, we're going to go out west and chat about Carter Bear. So we're looking at a 6 foot, 175-pound forward for the Everett Silvertips in the WHL. He is on absolute fire right now with 22 goals and 45 points in just 25 games played for the November 06 birthday. In terms of his skills, I like his skating ability. I think he uses it very, very effectively at the junior level, at least, and should be above average speed wise at the NHL. I don't think he's a burner by any stretch. He'll be above average, and his skating will never hurt him. I don't think he, is not fast like a McDavid, for example. But what he is very shifty and very good on his edges and extremely quick. And he's really quite able to create space for himself with his quick cuts. And I think that will translate very well for him because he does a very good job of using quick cuts and stops and starts to gain separation. And again, I mentioned this before, you're not often getting up to full top speed, but you're very often in tight spaces having to gain a little bit of room on a guy in tight quarters, which he does a quite a good job at. Now, he can beat goalies clean with his shot at the junior level. And I think his shot projects as above average at the junior level. I don't know that he's going to beat goalies from distance at the NHL level, but he does have a very good shot. His shot's going to, he has an NHL quality shot, and I think he's going to be able to bury some goals, especially because he has good hands in tight. And a lot of the goals that I've seen him score have been on very translatable plays where they're either tips or rebounds or things like that. And those are the types of goals that work. You're not beating goalies clean from the top of the circles too often anyways in the NHL. So a lot of the things he does, I think, are going to translate very, very, very well for him, despite the fact that it may just be an above average shot, which is, that's still good. It's still the NHL. He can be a very good playmaker at times. At times I've seen him be very creative and do a very good job of opening up lanes and dishing the puck. But I have seen him also be guilty of getting some tunnel vision and forcing his passes a little bit and not being able to adjust if his first primary read is covered. So that's something that's a bit of a work in progress for him. But I'd say he's a very very good playmaker for the most part. It's just a little bit there in terms of consistency and being able to adjust if against better teams when they cover your primary target. So I think he projects as a good playmaker that the D will have to play him honest. That said, I do think he does lean towards being a little bit more of a shooter than a passer when it's all said and done. He does like to fire the puck, and if he has the puck in a scoring zone, he's going to shoot the puck more often than not, at least in the games that I've seen anyways. Reads the play pretty well offensively. He's regularly in very good position actually to support the puck and take advantage when it bounces out of a scrum and pick that up and do something with it. So you like to see that. That's something that will always translate. If you can read the game and anticipate where the play is going, that's going to give you a leg up over most guys. Defensively, I liked his game when he wasn't worried about jumping the play to create offense. He knows his job is to put up points here, and that's not a secret. But when the time called for it in tighter situations, he did know how to defend properly and stay with his man. It's just, we're going to say this with almost every forward that's 17-year-old first round pick. There's some inconsistencies in his defensive play, but they're 18 years old. There's a long way between here and 23, and there's a lot of time for them to learn the nuances of that game. They're not expected to be perfect at this age. Now, where I have zero questions is his compete level. His compete level is excellent. It's maybe aside from his ability to put up points, his compete might be his best asset, and that's probably a big reason why he is putting up points. Is very, very high motor. You're rarely seeing him take a shift off. He's almost always engaged, going to the dirty areas, battling, not afraid, even though he's not the biggest guy. Good physical play. He's willing to take hits. He's willing to give hits, and I think that he's just big enough that when he fills out, I'm not worried about it. He's listed at 6 foot 175, so not big, not small. You'd like to see him probably in the NHL closer to 190, 195 or so. But he's going to be big enough where I'm not going to be worried about him getting beat around and hurt. But is he going to be a guy that's going to bully guys down low? No, probably not. But he'll compete and he'll battle, and I think he's strong enough and smart enough that that's fine. He is a guy that has been probably, as far as most lists have been concerned, probably this season's biggest riser from the preseason list until now. He started as a B-rated prospect with Central Scouting, and they very quickly realized the error in their ways and switched him to an A-rated player, and rightfully so. He's got 45 fucking points. So he's second in the WHL in scoring. And as Hockey Canada will tell you very quickly, that means jack shit, obviously. But he is I had to take a dig there. But he's producing as well as anybody not named Gavin McKenna. So there's some pretty good offensive upside. Now he's with one of the best teams in the West, and he's playing on a line with Julius Miettinen, who's been absolutely phenomenal for them this year. So he's surrounded by talent, so he should be producing, but he's still second in the league in scoring. So he's, you play with what you're given, and he's thriving. So he's been flying up people's rankings. He was not a first rounder. He was not on people's first round radar necessarily to start the year. I think he's a shoe-in first rounder for pretty much everyone now, and it's just a matter of how high this kid keeps climbing.
He's definitely inside my top 20, just from the viewings we've had. I'm going to just flat out say that. I mean, there's some skill set. There's a skill set here that plays. I mean, you mentioned it. The compete level, is extremely high. I actually think it's the best in the class. I think it's better than Zonin was, which is another guy we were very high on with, the motor, right? I think both those guys are, very translatable players. Now Zonin's bigger. I think Zonin's a bigger player, so he'll bring a more physical element. Whereas I think Bear has more offensive upside than maybe Zonin does. So that would be kind of, I'd rank those two guys very similarly, in that regard. I mean, they're both 06s too, I believe. So I mean, they're both older players, but I mean, his compete was outstanding, and especially for a smaller guy. I mean, he's not small, but I mean, that's what you like to see when you're not, the most physically imposing guy, that you're just completely annoying as hell to play against, which he is a complete asshole to play against. And I would take that guy in my team any day. Hello, Team Canada should call them about that one. But anyway, I mean, his physicality too. Again, he's even if he's a smaller guy, like he's still battling constantly. I mean, he's again, maybe he's not hurting guys, but he's causing all sorts of problems. That I really like to see that. Now, again, in terms of his actual, other aspects, I mean, again, there was a little bit of tunnel vision at times, with his passing, but I thought it was pretty good. I just needed a little bit more consistency. I mean, he made a fair amount of good plays. There's just some, at times maybe he just got pressure and he just, fired it to the wrong spot. But I mean, you kind of see the upside there that he can do that. I think that's why I like the player, because you can kind of see, you can see some offensive, his offensive upside, at times. It's just not fully maybe developed yet. But I mean, he makes good decisions most of the time, makes good passes most of the time. I mean, he's going to dig in front of the net all the time. Like I think he skates well enough. I mean, I don't think he's Connor McDavid speed, but I mean, I think his skating's probably above average. And even if he is skating, I mean, because he puts, even if it is just above average, but the amount of effort he puts into it's just enhanced that little bit more.
The quickness is there though.
Yeah, like but again, put the effort into it, and it's higher than it probably might be for another guy. Now, you do worry again. My worry would be, I did see some evidence when he's later in shifts, like he's getting tired, like he's just, how long can he actually withhold playing like that? Especially more physically imposing players. So that'd be a question. I mean, again, he'll get in better shape too. So but that would be, again, a question you maybe have is like, can he maintain playing that way over an 82 game season?
And he'll have to get thicker to do it. He's not going to be able to do it at 175 pounds for sure. You're going to have to get a lot closer to the 190 to 200 range, I think. But he's 18. He will develop. I mean, they're boys still, right? And they'll grow into men. And when that happens, I think he'll be fine, because you look at guys who are maybe not the biggest, but that play harder. You look at a guy like David Perron, or you look at a guy like Yanni Gourde, where they don't have necessarily tons of size, but their motor's so high and they're very strong lower bodies, and they're pesty, and it works.
Yeah. Well, we've also talked about guys that just kind of have some tendencies that, might drive coaches crazy. He won't. Like, the coach is going to see him from day one and be like, I want this guy on my team. And so I don't really have any questions on him actually making the NHL. Like, I think there is a defined role here for a player like this. Probably very, again, I know that you would talk about he needs to gain some weight, but I mean, I think a team's going to draft him. They're going to bring him to camp, and the coach is going to love him right away.
I think too, with his effort level and quickness, that combination, that to me, that shows a pretty high floor too, because he'll be able to play on your third line, even if if he's putting up 1 million points now, but if that doesn't translate to the NHL for him, there's still a lot of safety there as a third liner who's going to bust his ass for you, play hard, play smart, and be able to chip in offensively.
So if we're comparing him to maybe some other guys here, he's not going to go try and, dangle the defenseman at the blue line to get a chance. He's going to chip it by him, or, do a soft dump in and go get the puck, or go hit the defenseman. Like, that's the type of play he's going to make at times. Or, he's going to go to a hard area, to make that play. He's not going to turn it over at the blue line, I guess is what I'm going to say. And I don't think the coach would have to be worried about him doing that. In that case, he's going to get lots of responsibility from these pro coaches that way.
I agree with that.
Yeah. And so when you combine that with, we actually think he has some playmaking upside. He can play on a power play. He could, he can shoot the puck a bit. He can go to spots to get goals. Like, there's, like, maybe I might actually be rating him too low, honestly, at top 20. Because like, we talked about this with Spence, right? And I got Spence is a bigger body, a little bit different players, but I mean, it's kind of the same thing, right? This sounds like a guy, like, could he, be 30-30? Like, is that out of the realm of possibility with this player?
No.
Like, and if that's your upside and it's a big try hard guy, like, I mean,
Look, to me, there are probably 7 or 8 guys who are pretty bona fide top 10 locks, and I think there's a there's a group of about a dozen guys who could be the last 2 or 3 spots in that top 10 and make up your top 20, and I think he's in that range.
yeah, I think he is too. And he's, again, that group where we talked about, it's the high floor guy, and then you're just trying to judge what their offensive upsides are. And I think his is maybe higher than some of those guys.
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. And I mean, that's evidenced by the fact that he's putting up almost 2 points a game right now. He's second in his league in scoring, and he's able to play and have success with some of the best players in the league on his on his line and on his power play unit.
Now, I will say though, I will counter myself on this though. He does have a little. I think he's a little bit defensively not quite as good as maybe some of those other guys on that list.
Okay, so here's what I'll
yeah.
say about defense when it comes to draft eligible forwards. Okay, what I want to see is not necessarily now. There's guys who are great at it, who become great two-way forwards, and that's fine. But most players are not great at defense when they're this age. And what I'm looking for here is the compete level, because
Mhm.
guys that are competitive are willing to learn, right?
Yeah.
So think of how much development. So guys come in the league, what, they're 20, like, aside from your top 3 picks, top 5 picks, you're usually what, 21, 22 years old when you come in the league, right? So say you're drafted at 18, you come in at 22. So how much development did he go through from 13 to 17? That's huge, right? How much can you learn about the game from 13 to 17? So is he going to stop learning? No, he's going to keep learning. He's got 4 more years from 18 to 22 to keep learning and hone those skills. And if the efforts level there, like playing defense, especially if he ends up as a winger, like it's not so complicated that you can't learn it, but you have to be willing to. So a guy that, like, he's not honed yet, he's not polished yet, and there's some work to do defensively. I'm okay with that, and I'm okay actually even completely overlooking it if I see a high compete and a willingness to battle, because that means he's willing to learn and he'll be able to do so.
So I'm just looking at my notes of the last game I watched him, and it's when he got like he came into issues defensively, it was usually because he was overcompensating. He was trying almost too hard. He was getting back. He was getting out of position because he was hurrying back, to the wrong spot, or he was overcompensating, or he was, even on a forecheck, like he was, even the other way, he was just kind of overdoing it and getting caught,
running around a little bit.
Yeah, and that's, again, I feel like that is I'd rather have to rein a guy in than
For sure.
force him to try, right?
That is so coachable. That's so coachable. It's just like,
no, it is exactly.
They're junior players that are like, and every single one of these guys that we talked about before, every single one of these guys have been the best player growing up until they get to major junior, right?
Yeah.
So why are you learning the nuance of defense as you're not learning that as a teenager. So it's things that, again, it goes into the development part. So I'm not worried about it, because he has such a high motor, because he has such a high compete, and because he does have such good hockey sense the rest of the way. I don't care. He'll be fine.
Well, I definitely agree, though, now that he's, again, having, watched him a couple times. I wish I got to see him at the CHL game, which unfortunately he was sick that game, I guess.
He was good in game too.
Which would have been nice to see. But he's definitely a top 20 pick, I think. I don't think you can, really, if you're picking before, like, I don't know if you can't say no to that player at, 19 or something. You really can't. Especially with,
I mean, there's a lot of good guys. He's inside
good guys, but I think he has, again, you just see he's projectable as what he can be, and there's more there. It's just,
look, I'm a big fan, and the more that I watch him, the more that I like him.
Yeah. Like, every time I watch him, like, this guy's awesome.
Yeah. There's not much to nitpick with him. Yeah, sky's the limit for him. Honestly, like I think he does a lot of things really well that could translate. And started off as a second rounder. He's a slam dunk first rounder. He's starting to look like a slam dunk top 20 pick, and we're only in December here.
Yeah.
So that's Carter Bear from the Everett Silvertips of the WHL. Hell of a player, and the final guy that we will touch on in Central Scouting's A-rated guys, and that officially wraps that up, and that'll wrap up this episode 2 probably here. And our next episode is going to be our very first rankings, and me and Boy still have to talk and decide exactly how we're going to release these and what format we'll do. But we're going to try to make it a fun show because we put a lot of hours into this so far, and we're both really excited to put our list. And we haven't seen each other's list yet. We're going to try and keep those secret and get some live on the spot reactions and probably call each other some names, and it should be a very heated episode, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. So thank you everybody for sticking with us, and please like, share, comment, any sort of engagement. We're always happy to talk hockey, and thank you guys for tuning in. Boys, we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Look forward to it. See you later.